This is the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous, a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that I welcome Kimia, all the way from Toronto, who's come to share on step 9 for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for Q&A. With that, thank you so much, Kimia. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Young, and everybody for your service. I see and I know that a lot goes into maintaining the beautiful work that everyone is doing here. And welcome to everyone who is in this room, everyone who's joining, and perhaps anyone who might be hearing this recording at any point in time in history. May it continue to deliver the message that we're all supposed to hear. I'm a true believer that the message we all hope to hear is already within us. So it just takes a moment of just arrival for that to start flourishing. And my words will be supplementary. I chose step 9 for the purpose of today because there's something about the embodiment of the steps that becomes a lifelong practice. This book talks about a way of living, God's way of living, however you decipher, however you define, however you put words to that entity, the everlasting moment that is one breath. You can call it love, forgiveness, tolerance. Today, I can say that there is no aftertaste for me when I use the word God. So that would be the verbiage I use for the purpose of today. And I am forever indebted to the beauty of love and the true meaning of what it means to be a fellow from CA. You opened your arms to me when I was full of darkness, hate, and regrets. I sat in the rooms of CA for 6 months, not speaking a word, just trying to understand what's going on. And you told me that there is a solution if I am willing to listen and follow directions. I went to a workshop that actually happens this Sunday, led by Cameron F. I'm honored that you are here today, Cameron, because you've played a very important role in my recovery and the recovery of many others whom you have selflessly given to through a workshop that has become a way of passing on a message that is directly from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This workshop happens this Sunday. I will be screen sharing from the workbook that we use. Again, instructions of the book. It's just that Cameron has actually done the job and put it together so that we can pass this on a little bit easier to someone who hasn't gone through the steps, someone who is perhaps returning, or someone who continues this path of sponsorship. So if you are returning, my fellows, welcome. Nothing is ever lost on the spiritual plane. No amount of work you have ever done has gone to waste. This book says your dark past, which is my moment ago, it's my past, is my greatest possession. So nothing is ever lost. If you've never gone through the steps, stay. Just because we're focusing on step 9 today doesn't mean, oh, I don't know the rest of the steps. I will give a recap and we will get to a part of this book that starts talking about a way of living, what it means to actually understand restitution, restoration, and amends. I qualify and I'm here because when I honestly want to, I find that I cannot stop and I have no control over the amount I take. This book also talks about the fact that the problem of the addict is centered in the mind. When I have nothing else to reach for, I'm reaching for thoughts. I'm reaching for ways to get ahead of problems that are not even there. I'm constantly in that chasm, the chaos, the internal chatter of what it means to stop, but I can't. So today I know my description, thankfully. I know where to go for these instructions. And through a power that is greater than myself and a life that has been bestowed upon me, I get to be able to see how privileged I am to be alive and speak to you today. 100 beautiful souls in this room. It's real. So very quickly, the steps, if you've never gone through the steps, there are 8 steps before step 9. Very briefly, it says we admitted we were powerless over whatever drug of choice, that our lives had become unmanageable. And it's step 2. We come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Doesn't say God. It says a power. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of a God as we understood that God, whatever definition, conception. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We got real. We did a really thorough appraisal, no half measures. We admitted to God, ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs in our step 5. In our step 5, we also learn what it means to go to a properly appointed authority. Someone who can receive my inventory and be unaffected. In step 6 and 7, we're getting closer to this entity we call God, love, forgiveness. We are ready to have God remove all of these defects of characters because we've done the work in step 4, and we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings because we're willing for it to be lifted. In step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So this is the same list that you would have made in your step 4. Again, this is about simplicity of the steps that are interconnected and they communicate with one another. This is transferable knowledge. In step 9, we're making direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And I'm going to start screen sharing. I've put this in the chat, information about the workshop and also the workbook that I'm using to pull up these instructions. I'm all about making this a little bit more accessible to you so you don't have to worry about the mind taking in all the information, but you can just look at the screen and see that it's very easy to follow these instructions. And when you go to the website, you can always download a mocked version of Cameron's workbook here as well, along with some meditations and other languages as well. And you can sign up for the workshop and the next upcoming dates as well. So on step 9, we're getting right with others. And these steps are not meant to harm anyone. That's the point. It says we're getting right with others. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic and addict say that the only thing they need to do is to keep sober or clean. Certainly, they must keep sober or clean, for there will be no home if they do not. But they are yet a long way from making good to those whom for years they have so shockingly treated. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. And I love this part of step 9. I come into this going through the steps for the first time, or maybe I'm returning from doing my research out there, and I'm coming back thinking I have good knowledge of what it means to be considerate. I have good knowledge of what it means to be tactful. I have good knowledge of what it means to be able to speak others in a manner that continues to honor the love and tolerance code we talk about. Step 9 is supposed to humble me. This is what I love about step 9 being an act of nonviolence, ahimsa, this ethical principle of harming no living things, including myself along the way. I'm learning. So the false pride, if it's being carried over, I need to check that motive right away. I'm not coming into step 9 so I can just drive through into this, grab some knowledge. Now I'm going to go make amends and I'm going to restore all of my relationships. That's a fantasy that needs to be smashed. It says we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Yes, we did that. In step 4, we did that. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris, the harms done, which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If none of this verbiage makes sense to you, if you're a newcomer who is like, what is this self-will stuff? That is the malady. Regardless of what your addiction or affliction, the instructions remain to be the same. There's a spiritual malady that requires a spiritual solution. Self is manifesting itself in various ways, running the show, the actor, director. Now I am to look at the harms done as a result of that. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. And that's the cue for a prayer. The cue for the step 9 prayer of willingness. I might wake up really awake to the fact that I need God in my life, but I may not bring the words to mouth. This is my cue for that. That if you're 7 generations removed from the willingness to make amends or start looking at where the harms needs to be swept away, ask for the willingness to do so. It says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning. We will go to any length. Yes, because I have come in, as my good friend and fellow Anthony B says, broken, busted, and fucking disgusted. I am willing to go to any length. And if I'm forgetting, or perhaps a prospect that I'm walking through these steps is forgetting on step 9, why they came into program, why I came into these steps to follow, then I'm going to go back to my log and loser list and look at all of the things I have done, the failed strategies, and the results that have put me in loss every time. It says, remember, we agreed we would go to any length for victory over alcohol, drugs, obsessive compulsive behavior. So item number 1. Step 9 is educating me on where I need to be going with this. It says probably there's still some misgivings. Absolutely. The question of how to approach the person we hated will arise. Maybe they have done us more harm than we have done them, though we may have acquired a better attitude towards them. We are still not too keen about admitting our faults. That's our column 4. That's my character defects. That's the place where I blot out everything and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. It says, nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bits in our teeth. We start to follow with a certain willingness. Right? That's what it's talking about here. I'm not just going through the motions and emotions. I start following this with a certain willingness that allows me to remain teachable, humble. We go to them in a helpful and forgiving spirit. That is the embodiment of this part of the step. What does it feel in your body to be helpful and forgiving? Maybe it means your shoulders need to drop away from your ears, not squeezing everything so tight. Maybe it means relax your cheeks, have an attitude of gratitude. And a helpful and forgiving spirit doesn't mean I am to await a certain response or results. I like controlling the results. Confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. Their faults are not discussed. At any cost, they're not discussed. That's it. They're not. We stick to our own. Because if we don't, it means more paperwork. It means more harms. It means more amends. It means more work. And I also love that this book keeps talking about we do not criticize or argue. We're not here to get into contention or retaliation. That is death to us, because it will take us to the gates of insanity and death very quickly. And the purpose of making amends is to get into the deeper side of living this way of life in love, forgiveness, tolerance. Anger and resentment, my best friends. There's a forgiveness prayer. It says this was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. And when you see those columns, those are the references to our step 4 columns. You can always go back on this workbook and check that out and come to the workshop and see it. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, what I lose, what is impacted in me, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Would you agree? Yes or no? Absolutely. Today I can see that. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance. Again, there it is. There's the way of living. Same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended us, we said to ourselves, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful to this person? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And I'm all about personalizing, tasting these words to these prayers. So when I say this prayer, I don't say, God save me from being angry anymore. I say, God save me from being anything but love. Nothing more than that. Nothing less than that. Anything but love. Everything outside of love is an invitation for love. So remember this prayer. This step is giving you the verbiage, the vocabulary that you can make your own. Develop your own relationship with the power that can save you from being angry and resentful at someone in that moment. arming me with the right tools so that I can live or learn to live. Item number 2 is money. Most addicts owe money. Yes, we do not dodge our creditors. And on this, we keep saying, pay your bills, take the calls, pay your bills, take the calls. And this book talks about arranging the best deal we can. We let these people know we are sorry. It also says that they might have the willingness to arrange for a deal that might work to our benefit. So dodging the calls is actually not very helpful, is it? My purpose of existence is to be of maximum helpfulness. If I cannot face it, I will die. It's going to tell me that in a minute. We must lose our fear of creditors, no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink, use, act out if we are afraid to face them. It's a very simple formula for me. To not take the call, to not face the truth, the creditors, it means I'm going to act out, I'm going to die very quickly, and sometimes not in that order. It's a very serious disease. And at this point in our steps, we've come to understand that it's a progressive disease. It's only going to get worse, not better. But in step 9, we are here in the work of amends and a certain mannerism through which it happens. Item number 3 is criminal offenses. Perhaps we've committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. Yes or no? If it were known. And some of that means some of the things that we don't think are actual criminal offenses, like stalking someone, just happen to just be in front of them at somewhere in the public, right? Entering someone's property because we have a key, but we're not actually allowed to. So many different things that we do online or offline. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, many forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. So let's see what that is. It says, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length. Again, I'm to follow a recipe, to find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given strength and a direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. This is a prayer. This is a prayer for strength and direction when I am in paralyzing fear, because I know they are coming to get me. Because my mind has already told me I'm going to go to jail if I'm to be found out. I am to go back to this prayer and ask for the strength and the direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. That includes going to jail. That includes having to appear for the consequences of actions that may be found out. It says we may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. And that's the toughest part, isn't it? To build the willingness. And for some of us, to lose our position or reputation professionally or personally is jail. The bondage of self is jail. Me waking up to the same thoughts is jail. So it says we must not shrink at anything. Shrink at nothing. Nothing is too big, too unresolvable for your God. Directing me back to God, remove fear prayer. Instead, we let God demonstrate through us what it can do. We ask God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what God would have us be. And I love that it doesn't say, what would God have me do? Oh, go write a letter to someone, go apologize, go send a text, go try to plan the results. No, it says, what would God have me be? Every time I ask God, what would God have me be? God says, be loving, be courageous, be tolerant, be of service, be humble. Many other things. It says at once we commence to outgrow fear. That's another beautiful type of prayer that can really become a bestie to some of us who need to face the paralyzing fear. Item number 4 is sex relationships. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Yes or no? Absolutely. Even when the substance is no longer an issue, problems in our relationships will be there. Codependency will be there. Some level of disruption in the way we interact with the world outside of us will show itself. It's an opportunity for us to go after all. It says perhaps we're mixed up with people, others, in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. Yes, all the side people, all the swiping, all the scrolling, the list of people I like to recycle through when I'm lonely, right? So wouldn't care to have advertised. So prayers for sex amends, which also becomes prayers for anything. We ask God to mold our ideals. That's our spiritual principles, and help us to live up to them. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. I like that. It says specific matter. Bring clarity to this work. Kimia, you have to take this seriously. Dumping a bunch of requests on a God that is all-seeing is not the purpose. We're getting very meticulous about this work here. The right answer will come if we want it. I might be uttering the words, but do I truly want this? Because when it's being removed, am I still clinging for it to come back? It is to be removed. It says we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, if booze, drugs, alcohol, people, places, jobs, money is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. That's a very straightforward direction. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. What's the heartache? More amends, more paperwork, more work. What's the imperious urge? That internal chatter that's not leaving you alone, the same repetition of the same recycled thought, the same actions, the same consequences. Step 9 instructions, we're almost there. I love these instructions because they're just so clear. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. Remember, we said the steps are to make no harm, implicate other people. When I come into program and I have no understanding of what it means to be other people, I only know what it means to be in myself, is going to be a process. So at the top of this page, I have consent, consult, ask God. In meditation, it's very simple. So we ask for their consent. It says we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others. Who are others? The properly appointed authorities. Criminal matters, see a lawyer. Mental, emotional issues, see a therapist. Medical issues, see a doctor. Financial matters, see an accountant. Tax lawyer, debt counselor. Moral matters, see a spiritual advisor, sponsor. And we ask God, number 3, to help. And the drastic step is indicated. We must not shrink. There's a certain level of courage, but the humbled type. We must not shrink. We have a powerful God. Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. I am to remember this is not an overnight matter. We must take the lead. And I love that the book is empowering all of us to start seeing ourselves in God's will as leaders. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fit the bill at all. I am a master at just saying sorry in so many different ways. You're going to package it differently and sell it to you so differently that you're going to buy it every time. But it tells me that's not how this step works. It won't fit the bill at all. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That's the part where I start having a changed behavior and attitude towards life, God, my fellows. A revolutionized reaction to the way I respond to things. I start waking up with the action, not the theory. The theory is great. It's great to know instructions, the book, and everything. But if I'm not living them in the way I carry myself throughout the day, from the moment I open my eyes to the moment I put my feet down to turn a knob open, am I inviting God into any of this? Our behavior will convince them more than our words. That's why the mumbling that we're sorry won't fit the bill at all. Our behavior will convince them. We must remember that 10, 20, 30, many years of drunkenness and addiction would make a skeptic out of anyone. So when I wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy, and I think the rest of the world needs to get with that energy, I need to remember that just because I have a moment of excitement and I want to invite everybody to this party of mine, that my behavior will convince them more than my words. That kind of excitement is actually not good for an addict of my type. The expectation of the world to also respond to that is not real. It says there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Yes or no? Yes. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. And this is a part of the step that it truly is to be a lived experience. I might look at a certain amend and at first be like, yeah, I could probably write this. But when I check the motives to that, I realize that when I honestly say I would, if I could, I actually can't, and I am to leave it alone. Someone has a restraining order against you, you're trying to make amends, just not wise. It's not going to work. Someone who's told you they do not wish to any longer communicate with you, and you're still trying to find their number, probably not where your energy is supposed to be foolishly wasted. So some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. At the time that this was written, the only form of communication was writing a letter. There's so many other ways to communicate. And sometimes the amends is in not communicating until I have a good understanding of what it means to make those amends. And in walking many people through this step, I have seen some examples of where an amends is, to the writer's view, written without any motives. And once we read it together and we check the motives, it is actually full of self all over again. There's a part of the step five instructions I'm going to bring into this quickly. It says on page 73, they only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. Kimia only thought she had lost her egoism and fear. She only thought she had humbled herself. But she had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in a sense we find it necessary until they told someone all of their life story. This is part of step 5 instructions. But I like to keep this in mind that perhaps sometimes I only think I know enough of egolessness. So therefore I go ahead with certain amends. And sometimes again, the amends is make sure someone is not receiving your, credit card bills, your collection bills, is not receiving your calls. Sometimes the amends is changing that address and calling that creditor. It says, and there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, especially when there's a court order, when there's something, in front of a judge, or there's an actual request, there's a family dynamic. But we don't delay it if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. Again, embodiment. This is the lived part of it. Without being servile, groveling, ass-kissing, or scraping, quarrelsome, which means more damage, more harm. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. To be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble, and when I am in self, is take me as I am. I am all of those. But when I check my motives and I start really looking at what is sensible, what is tactful, do I actually have the language required to understand what tact means? The ability to tell the truth in a way that considers others. Do I know what that means? But it gives me the instructions without being servile or groveling, ass-kissing, scraping. And so the best part of this step as we finish, the promises. And the promises are real. The promises do come true. I'm here to tell you that regardless of how dark today might be for you, that there's some level of light, that the point is not chasing the light and being enlightened, is to see some level of light in the darkness. At this point, if you're working with someone or if you're working your steps and you're on your step 9, you start seeing the promises. Something starts lifting from you. It says if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, painstaking, meticulous, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. That internal peace. And that moment of silence, that just one moment of silence. And that the drugs and the people and the places and things cannot even bring for me anymore, right? That one moment, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That I will know that regardless of how dark it has gotten for me, regardless of how low I have gone, that it's going to be helping somebody else. It was always supposed to be this way. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Just will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Out of self, into others. And I'm not trying to exit self so many times. The more I try to exit self, I enter self. The only way is to get closer to a God that guides me to a collective consciousness. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Some of the things I didn't notice before become noticeable, right? I start asking God to help me fall in love with God all over again and all of the beauties of all seasons. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. The money problem, the sticky thought that won't leave me alone will leave me. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us, I like to add, and through us, what we could not do for ourselves. Do you want this experience in your life? Yes or no? I absolutely do. And I hope that you do as well. There's something I would like to add in before we go into the best part of this, which is hearing from you. 40 minutes of hearing myself is way too long, but I get to hear you. And that's the most beautiful part of it. And so on page 80, it references a certain story. And that goes back to this step and making amends in a certain manner required for this way of life. It says, this brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money, and he used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened the old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those independents upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting with his wife, again, that's consult, consult, and ask God, and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking, thinking, dying again. And all would be lost anyhow. He attended the church for the first time in many years. And this is the part where this person is actually embodying this, the instructions that we just went through. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. There's something about that, as brief as it is. There's something so calming about the way we can go about some of the biggest things, some of the biggest harms. They become a little bit more right-sized when we follow the instructions and come to it with the spirit of helpfulness, love, and tolerance. And sometimes it takes years to get to a space where we can continue. And that's what I love about the fact that step 10 comes after. And it says we rigorously commence this way of life as we cleaned up the past. We continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along the way. It doesn't say do your step 9, make your amends, and then go to step 10. No, you will continue to make your amends as you go through the rest of the steps. So there's no reason why we should be dragging our feet. So again, welcome to anyone who might be returning to this beautiful fellowship that opened its arms to me when I could not go anywhere else. No one else would have understood. And to the new fellow who needs a sponsor, ask for someone in the chat once the chat is open. I'm going to put my number in the chat as well and beside my name. I should have actually done that, but you can reach out to me on WhatsApp anytime, and I'm more than happy to get you connected to a sponsor, to someone who can start working the steps with you. And again, if you're interested to see how a fellowship that has stayed in the solution at least for the past 3 years, we're a Big Book sponsorship network, how we work the steps through this workbook, come to the workshop this Sunday. I'll put that information in the chat again, and get to see how Cameron F. and the rest of the crew and our Halloween edition present to you some of the simplest ways of understanding the steps and transferring it to others. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm humbled by the ability to be here with you. And thanks again. I look forward to hearing from you.